All right, y'all. We back in here. Back from the international break, fortunately, doing a Brentford home to Chelsea match preview. You know, it's funny. The international break, I love watching the football, but I watch it a lot more casually, obviously, unless it's a match that really matters for qualifying or it's two marquee teams or an interesting team that, piques my interest. But otherwise, you know, I don't really pay much attention to it. I'm not as invested, obviously. But in any case, we're going to get into the Brentford and Chelsea preview. First thing I want to do, though, is I want to touch on the 74 charges that were levied against Chelsea Football Club during the week. And anybody who's been following the situation or following the club, I should say, for a couple years now would know that these charges were always coming. Obviously, to the extent we didn't know, but it was reported for a couple years now. I would say that Chelsea had breached the financial fair play laws, that the FA had, and they all occurred obviously before the current ownership took charge, which is made clear obviously by the fact that this was all self-reported. And it turns out that a lot of those financial breaches were payments made to families and representatives of players, like I said, approximately 10 years ago. So it's unfortunate that it has to come out now, but I guess it never would have had this current ownership never took charge. I think the key point is that it's reported that Chelsea would have passed PSR regardless of whether these payments were on the books or not. And so as a result, the club is expecting a fine and nothing like a points deduction that Everton saw or that many people want Manchester City to see when, their investigation finally concludes, which who knows when that will happen. And, at the end of the day, the club, circumvented, the financial fair play laws. And so as a result, they deserve to be punished. And clearly, as a Chelsea supporter, I'm happy that it's not going to be like a points deduction or anything serious like a transfer embargo or anything like that. But yeah, we'll see what comes of it. I expect that the conclusion should come quickly, much quicker than the Manchester City conclusion and their many charges. But in any case, we wait and see. Another quick note: Emmanuel Emega from Strasbourg confirmed to be joining the club in 2026. I think there's a chance he's probably loaned back for an additional season, depending on how good he looks for the club in France. But he seems like he's a couple years younger than Nico Jackson. Seems like a player with exciting potential, obviously. I mean, that's all. That's the type of profile that the club go after these days. But I think that in any case, this means that Nico Jackson has definitely gone 100%, if not to Bayern. I know that some of the details on his obligation came out in the past and during this international break, and that I think he has to make something like 40 starts for the club or appearances where he makes at least 45 minutes, which he's unlikely to do, obviously being behind Harry Kane at striker, and then him having to also go to the African Cup of Nations in January. So that's looking unlikely, but I think he's definitely gone. But the other thing I think is that it puts some pressure on Mark Yu to take his chance. He was brought back as a result of Liam Delap's injury at the end of the day, so he'll get an opportunity to play for the next couple months, and hopefully he makes the most of it for his sake, because he took a chance coming to the club with the idea of developing and playing for the first team, obviously, and he'll get a chance to do so. We'll see if he can establish himself. Moving on to some of the injury notes, it's Cole Palmer was shown in training pictures this week. It looks like actually it was just the past couple of days that he returned to training, and he may not be ready for this game. And while ideally, obviously, we would like to have him and see him in this game, if he's not ready, he's not ready. I mean, the schedule is not looking very easy in the next couple of weeks with 4 away matches coming on the bounce, starting with Bayern midweek in the Champions League and then Manchester United at the weekend. So if he's not ready versus Brentford, sit him by all means. Don't even allow him on the bench, because Bayern and Manchester United are much tougher games. I don't want to overlook Brentford, but it should be a team that Chelsea should dispatch of easily. So we'll see when it comes to that. The other thing is that, unfortunately, Dario Sugo is out probably for the rest of the calendar year with a thigh injury that he needed surgery on. Injury occurred while he was away on international duty with the U21s of his national team. It's unfortunate, because I think especially in this match, had he been healthy, he might have gotten a chance to play with some of the midfielders going away on international duty. So it's unfortunate for him. Like Liam Delap, would have gotten plenty of opportunities to impress, and that's just not going to be the case for the next couple months, unfortunately. I think also Romeo Lavia and Badiashile, as I stated in a previous video, the manager saying that they probably weren't going to be ready coming out of the international break, and lo and behold, they are not. I guess they're close. We'll see what that means for each of them respectively, but hopefully they'll be back soon, because with Dario Sugo out, Levi Colwell, long-term injury, those two players specifically are going to be relied upon to stay healthy, if they can stay healthy. So we'll see how that goes. Alejandro Garnacho, I think probably makes the bench. He didn't have a preseason, as the manager said in his pre-match press conference. So I doubt he starts in this match specifically, but I'm sure he'll feature at some point, and he'll get an opportunity to make his first appearance for the club in this match. And in terms of the international duty, we had Estevao, João Pedro, Andre Santos, and Moises Caicedo all arrive late and return late from international duty, I should say. And 2 games a week now, with the schedule starting to pick up, it's going to be a little tough. They've all returned healthy, obviously, but returning late means a couple of them may not be able to feature in this match. So I think we'll see a lot of rotation, depending on the players available. And then my last note that I wrote down is Reece James, playing 2 matches for England in this international break. He's clearly fully back fit. I still think he probably needs to be managed, and the club definitely believes so, I'm sure. And so I think he's also another candidate to be saved for midweek against Bayern, because as much progress as he's shown in the past season or so, he's still not at the point where I think we can all be 100% comfortable seeing him feature match in, match out. So I think he's another candidate, like I said, to probably be on the bench at the weekend. Now moving on to the matchup itself, Brentford. Last season, I think we drew away to them, and then had a competitive 2-1 win at home, where I think it was going up 2-0, and then a late, it might have been Brandon Buemo bringing one back in the 89th, 90th minute, somewhere in that range, and then it finishing 2-1, it being a competitive game. I think Nico Jackson missed a sitter in that match, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And so, this is a team that's always been competitive for Chelsea. I think the stat was only 1 win away since they've been promoted, and this match being away just means that it'll be competitive for them. They were always organized under Thomas Frank, albeit they're under a new manager, so we'll see how that goes. But it's clearly they're going to be organized, like I said, and that they'll be tough on set pieces, being that their set piece coach is now their head coach. And so it'll be a real test for the team and their progression on those set pieces, both offensively and defensively, because previously they've been pretty prone to conceding to set pieces and haven't been much of a threat offensively on those. And, Chelsea have shown an improvement, I would say, in that department to begin the season. And this will be the test to see if that's truly the case. Otherwise, I think the team is obviously going to, dominate possession and hopefully create a bunch of chances. But it'll be a chance for a couple players to come in and improve. Moving on to my predicted lineup, I think the keeper and the back four largely remain the same. Rob Sanchez in goal. I have Gusto starting at right back over Reece James. And then Trevor Chalobah and Tosin as the right center back and left center back respectively. And then Cucurella, who, although Hato has come in, I think he's just the mainstay at left back until proven otherwise, obviously. And then in midfield, it was a little tough for me to choose, if only because Dario Sugo obviously is out for injury and Lavia is not back. So it kind of picks itself, I should say, with Caicedo and Enzo. And then Andre Santos, obviously returning late from international duty. He hasn't started a match yet this season. And, not being fully fit maybe for this game, depending on his travel situation. I just don't think it's the right time to be throwing him in there and him making his first start for the club. Although I'll do make the note that I think there's a chance Reece James starts in midfield. Maybe even like Hato or Achampong in an emergency situation. But it'll probably be Moises Caicedo and Enzo. There's only so much rotation you can do, especially with some of the injuries that are there in midfield. But like I said, it's going to be those two, I would imagine, unless Reece James makes a semi-surprise start in midfield. And then I think it gets interesting with the three behind the striker and then the striker itself. So I have Pedro Neto starting on the right. As I said, Stevao coming back late from international break. Young kid. Don't think it'd be smart to throw him in there and start him versus Brentford. And then on the left, I actually have Jamie Gittins starting. Alejandro Garnacho, as I said previously, not fully fit. And so I think this is the perfect opportunity for Jamie Gittins to show out and perform in this match. Because it's against a team that ideally we would hopefully dominate possession and create loads of chances. And so, because of the circumstances of the club, I think it's the perfect opportunity for him to come in and make an impact. And he's ahead of the pecking order, I imagine, than Tyreek George at this point. So it is what it is. Now, the center attacking midfielder and the striker is where it gets a little interesting. I think João Pedro has to start, if only because options are a little limited with Cole Palmer not being fully fit and obviously Liam Delap being out long term. And you can't rotate everybody, as I said, with the midfield. So I think he has to start. And then if I had to predict if Cole Palmer isn't able to start, I would imagine it's going to be either Mark Gu or Guananate. And if I had to pick or choose one of the two, I would go with Mark Gu, if only because the manager is more comfortable with him at this point to start the match. And so, obviously not ideal options. Ideally you would want them to play against a team like Lincoln City in a week and a half's time, in the cup. But it is what it is. And so if I had to make a prediction for the match, I would say actually it would be a carbon copy of last season's match at home, where it was 2-0 and then Brentford bring one back late to make it 2-1, a competitive and tough 2-1. But that's how I see it finishing. It would be nice to come away with 3 points, obviously, considering the fact that Chelsea stand second in the table. I think this is a little bit of a trap match. However, if I had to say, and I wouldn't be surprised by a draw, but I think a loss is completely unacceptable, obviously. And so 2-1 at the end of the day is what I'm predicting. And, it'd be good to come back out of the international break with a bright start, because it's 4 away matches on the bounce. Brentford, Bayern Munich midweek in the Champions League, Manchester United away, and then Lincoln City, obviously a step down in the Carabao, but at the end of the day, it's still 4 matches away on the bounce. And then after that, it's not like it gets easier. It's Brighton, Benfica, and Liverpool. So, it's important to come back out of the international break with a positive result, and hopefully the club can provide us with that. I'll be back with a match review, I should say, as well as maybe reviewing that Manchester derby at the weekend, which is very, very interesting. In any case, if you've come across this video, leave a like, and I appreciate you watching. Peace.